Another week has passed us by, and that means new things to talk about concerning Fortune's Weave, courtesy of the Japanese Twitter account. And for the first time in what feels like weeks, we opened the week without a trailer, with us getting 2 screenshots instead. These focus on the various weapon types a Fire Emblem game has, which we obviously all know, but that doesn't mean there is nothing of interest here. First of all, we get the confirmation that the physical weapon system is the same as in Three Houses, not Engage. That means we get swords, bows, axes, lances and gauntlets, but no daggers like Engage had, not as their own category at least. They'll probably be swords again. The second screenshot then also adds the 2 offensive magic types for the full picture, Reason and Dark Magic. The woman in this image, shown as the example of light magic, is a companion we have seen before at Leda's side. The dark magic user is Fabio, of course. The other image features 5 characters for 5 weapon types, all of which are still unrevealed. The sword user with the red streak in his hair has been frequently seen in all kinds of trailers and is borderline confirmed to be a unit recruitable in every or at least multiple routes. The blonde guy with the orange armor that gets to showcase lances was very briefly seen in Theodora's trailer as a member of her army. He rides on a flying Orneus, which explains his choice for a lance. Both the guy showing off axes and the orange-haired person showing off gauntlets are seen several times at Leda's side, while the bow user with the red hair has also previously been seen alongside Theodora. The text accompanying this image confirms something we already kinda knew, which is that regular weapon attacks don't use durability, but magic does. Combat arts do reduce durability though, which is not stated here, but has been visible in past trailers. It is also confirmed that changes have been made compared to Three Houses in terms of weapon distribution. Weapons are now locked to classes again, which has always been the standard but wasn't the case in Three Houses. We have seen quite some classes in Fortune's Weave that seem to now have access to more weapons than they did previously though, so that might be introduced to compensate for that. Okay, fast forward 2 days and we get to some much bigger news. The official reveal of Bonapart. While his design may look as if he is an old school chapter boss turned playable character, calling him that would be doing a great disservice to his character. Bonapart is the right-hand man of Theodora and serves as a general in her army back in Saramis. It is apparently forbidden in the kingdom of Saramis to write, very interesting that, which is why Bonapart has tons of history and knowledge from his land memorized. Other interests of his include debating and poetry. Yeah, he looks like a bandit or a pirate, but my man is an intellectual. Love it. But of course, the real thing to hone in on here is the fact that writing is outlawed in Saramis. This is usually done as a way of controlling the populace. For example, Rhea has the printing press outlawed in Fogland for similar reasons. No books means no common access to history, means no one to pick up on the fact alive. So, does that mean Theodora also rules with an iron fist, banning writing to keep her citizens under the thumb? No, I don't think so. Her entire wish for the heroic games is to free her people, and so far, it hasn't really been clear why she would want that. But this feels like a strong indication. Remember, it was revealed earlier that Theodora's land of Saramis is not an independent country, it falls under Dagda. And so, Theodora has someone sitting above her, and I would be willing to bet that someone is the person who has made writing forbidden, probably among other stipulations to keep the Saramis population weak. And it's exactly that Theodora wants to fight and rebel against. That's my theory at least. From what we've seen from her, I doubt Theodora herself would impose such an extreme measurement on her people, especially when you consider her own right-hand man would love to write a poem or two. We also got 2 short trailers for Bonapart, the first being another conversation. For Tiara, this was probably a support. Fabio may have had some sort of post-battle thing, but this is surely a story-relevant cutscene, presumably early on in Theodora's story. Here, Bonaparte talks back to a presumably high-ranking noble within Saramis, Dayan, a name that was already previously used in the Binding Blade, by the way. Dayan is of the opinion a country is territory and belongs to a strong king, but Bonaparte takes him back to school and tells him a country belongs to the people, even not so subtly telling him he is not a rightful king for not understanding that. The previous king, Sergio, did understand that though, as does Theodora, his successor. Again, pretty strong evidence Theodora is not the one who has outlawed writing. This scene gives us a very strong indication of who Bonaparte is. Wise, smart, philosophical, and clearly confident in his position as a political force, which he would be as an army general. In a previous direct, we also saw a shot of Theodora confronting the killer of her father, and I can't help but wonder whether Dayan is that person. On one hand, he does feel kinda evil and like the type to kill the king to take his throne, but on the other hand, I struggle to see how this conversation would work if Dayan was the murderer. Surely he'd be in jail or dead then. Unless that isn't known at this point in the story, I guess. Maybe this is even the start of the conversation that leads to that reveal. We also learn from this convo that Megira, referenced in Megira's Flame, which is the faction and route name for Theodora, is the capital of Saramis. This convo is presumably set in its palace, where we see Theodora without her headwear, as well as once again her other retainer, who is basically always seen alongside Theodora and Bonapart. Maybe if Bonapart is the brain, he's the brawn? And then we of course have the gameplay footage for Bonapart as well. He too is a diviner, just like Fabio and Tiara, which is definitely suspicious. 3 right-hand figures to the main characters and they are all diviners? Surely that is not a coincidence. It is mentioned in the accompanying tweet that Bonaparte can use both swords as well as magic, thus confirming that diviners can use a lot more than just magic this time around. This text also says Bonaparte has access to combat arts that improve the abilities of his allies, although we don't see that in the trailer. What we do see though is the setting, the background, which clearly reveal this is a not before seen chapter. There are statues everywhere, long stairs in the back, pillars up to the ceiling around the map and traps and healing tiles on the ground. The entire place feels reminiscent of the Holy Tomb from Three Houses, and while I doubt it's actually that, this is definitely some sort of mausoleum, tomb, rune, or at the very least a place of great importance. I do think we are a long way from Saramis though. The setting feels more like Daxian to me based on the architecture and aesthetic. When Bonaparte is selected, we can see he's accompanied by Theodora and the Orneus rider from earlier, neither of which get support hearts above their head. The banner we saw with Fabio last week is also not here, so either you can fully turn support hearts off, whatever it is they do, or this is before Bonaparte has earned even a single support point with his allies, in general or in this chapter. He is armed with a bronze sword and a wind tome, neither of which are new of course, but the enemy he targets? That's a different story. These are probably the shadow or dark-like beings summoned at the end of the recent Direct trailer. This game's equivalent to the Risen, the Corrupted, etc. This enemy's faction though, it's listed as Barn Soldier or something like that. No clue how that might be localized or what it means, it's impossible to say. We do know now though that these enemies are not like monster units with special monster weapons, they do follow the human class systems. This guy is a hunter and equipped with a bronze bow. We can also see here in the battle prep screen that just like Tiara and Fabio, Bonaparte has no crest. When he attacks the opponent, who is probably using a battalion by the way, a new skill triggers called Neverworld Blessing. This gives us a slight hint at what these creatures may be aligned with, something akin to a Neverworld is likely to play a role, presumably as the location or the dimension that the portal pulls these enemies from. But Bonaparte isn't done. We have seen him use a sword, now we get to see him use magic as he moves to the next target. This is a monster unit, a Wight, which is the first enemy in the entirety of all these trailers that doesn't have one of those shadowy portraits. Wights, or Hellbones, when translated literally, are enemies that have appeared in the series before, being in Sacred Stones and the 2 Valentia games. That's interesting, those are by far the most monster-heavy Fire Emblem games. Perhaps that is a sign of what's to come. We can get a brief glimpse of the boss of the map here as well, confirming the return of extra health bars from Engage in Three Houses. The battle itself is not that interesting, although we do get to see Bonaparte's critical hit animation. It is however the same as Soraka's critical hit animation, which was included in the recent Direct. And that brings us then to, presumably, the final retainer, belonging to Leda. This is Buccaneer, or Vakania, or Bacania, or even Buchanan. We simply don't know yet. Sometimes we can make a safe assumption on how a Japanese name will translate to English, but with this guy it doesn't really work. That's not per se new, Three Houses had a few examples as well, like Byleth being called Beresu and Yuri's Japanese name being Julis. I'm gonna call him Vakania for now, but know that if you run into someone talking about Buccaneer, this is who they mean. Since we have currently seen all 4 closest allies to our main characters, we have to talk about something that more people have started to notice. All 4 of them have something off with their eyes, or their eyesight rather. Tiara has glasses, Fabio has a lazy eye, Bonaparte has an eye patch, and Vakania has this massive scar over his eye. Is that significant? I don't think it will be. It is certainly intentional, this is not a coincidence, but I don't think it is anything more than a design theme for these characters. I can think of a believable reason why it would be important for all of them to have weakened eyesight. I guess I could be proven wrong, and it might turn out crucial to the story that all presumed routes have a main character that may struggle to see completely perfectly, but I don't know, that feels kinda far-fetched to me right now. So I'm calling it a purposeful design theme, not a story-related theme. As for his profile, he is a seasoned warrior, as you can tell just by looking at him, and is known by the nickname Demon Bear. It's a nickname that immediately brings up the idea of a mercenary. It's giving Ashen Demon vibes, although we'll have to wait and see whether that is true and where the bear part hails from. I doubt the in-universe explanation is the same as why a certain subset of the fanbase will call him that. He has been serving Leda's father for many years, further suggesting he is a mercenary or a sellsword or something like that, and as a remnant of that time, he calls Leda princess or lady, depending on how you translate it. He still accompanies her now on her journey for revenge, although he does harbor complex feelings. Definitely some stuff to unpack here. First of all, princess or lady. Very convenient word choice, and the way it is used here is definitely meant to send us into fairy territory. It could just be as simple as Vakania knowing Leda since she was a kid, when he affectionately called her princess, a habit he has never let go of. But as a remnant of that time, could also be referring to days where perhaps Leda was living as a princess or a noble daughter somewhere. That would also explain why Vakania served her father and why he has conflicted feelings, because a warpath for revenge is probably not the route of life he envisioned little Leda would walk. I mean, it literally says his likes include fantasizing about Leda's future, as well as loyalty and mentoring young people. It's also a possibility that conflicted feelings instead refer to Vakania knowing more about the death of Leda's parents than she does. After all, it's stated nowhere here that Vakania harbors feelings of resentment and revenge, but if his liege he was so close to was killed, then surely he wouldn't be too happy about this Lechner character either, right? Unless he knows this person Leda hates to such an extent, which I assume is Lechner based on this shot from the recent direct, is actually innocent and more redeemable than she thinks. But that's all theory stuff, it's impossible to know right now. It could just be as simple as he calls her princess affectionately and feels conflicted because he doesn't like to see this little girl he has seen grown up fighting and consumed by revenge. I do want to point out the word used here in Japanese is hime, which usually would mean actual royalty or nobility at least, and not oju, which is what it would probably be if it was an endearing princess. Then again, the conversation trailer for Vakania seems to rule out the possibility that Leda is a true princess, like Theodora is. Here, she and Vakania talk about his past and how he met her father specifically. Leda remarks that he looks nostalgic as he reaches Daxian, revealing that the two of them headed through the gate of the divine path to get here. Seems like the influence of the divine sovereign already starts outside of Daxian. Vakania explains that Daxian is where he met Leda's father 20 years ago, which she didn't know. He calls him Lord Guillermo and explains he was a legal officer at the capital, not a king. So the idea that Leda is an actual princess can probably be ruled out. But it isn't unthinkable at all a legal officer would be of noble standing, which would be news regardless. So far, I feel like we all assumed Leda was a commoner, but she might very well not be. Vakania explains he challenged Guillermo to a duel, foolishly, he adds. He also reveals he is from Paphos, which is not mentioned anywhere on the world map we have. There is however a Davos, which might be the localized name for this location, in which case Vakania is from the kingdom of Arago. Guillermo would end up kicking Vakania's ass, but then reached out a hand to him when he was laying on the floor. Yeah, Leda's father may have been a legal officer, but he definitely worked out on his days off. Now, we don't know how old Guillermo was at this point in his life, but it's clear he was a physically powerful man and perhaps politically as well, which all reflects further on what kind of person this Lechner may be. He is not some petty criminal or an assassin if he managed to kill Leda's father, let's put it that way. Finally, I'd like to point out this conversation is probably a support conversation, which might shed some light on how early the characters reach Daxian. After all, this conversation wouldn't be possible before reaching the capital, clearly takes place after they've been there. So, assuming we would only get shown as C support in the promo rollout, that would mean that either the support between Leda and her closest ally is locked away for a certain amount of time, hard to believe, or, the more likely one, Leda at least arrives in Daxian very early on in the story. Okay, on to Vakania on the battlefield then, which is probably the least exciting gameplay trailer of the four retainers. He is at least the only one of them not to be a diviner, as Vakania is a soldier. Turns out it was probably a coincidence after all. Soldier used to always be a lance-focused class, but Vakania is clearly an armored unit, complete with axes, so something has changed here. Based on the proficiency bonus though, he can probably also still use lances, further evidence of that wider weapon availability I mentioned earlier. Vakania's battle trailer focuses on the enemy phase, where, as an armored unit, he shines. He is attacked by an enemy of the Palma Rain faction, which has a unique symbol, suggesting it may be relevant. Palma is also a location visible on the map. Vakania triggers 2 skills during this fight, Shield Axe, which is also the name of his weapon, as well as Guard Knight's Duty. What they do is impossible to say at this point in time, but they are new at least. Also know that the enemy here is an armored knight, yet uses a sword. When the battle is over, we finally get a look at the setting of this map, which is the Heroic Games. We haven't seen this exact setting before, but we have seen Dietrich in quite some similar locales, so perhaps this is how route exclusive chapters will work. Similar, but not exactly the same. Fighting alongside Vakania are Leda, Sirocco, the orange-haired person from the weapon screenshot, and a blonde girl with braided hair, who we have also seen before, but then when the camera shifts to the next enemy, we also catch a sight of a new character. To the right here are 3 teal or green units, one nearly undetectable off-screen, one appears to be the person with the cat mask, who was also seen as a teal ally of Theodora's before, and this new unit, an archer who I wanna say is a woman with dark blue hair and maybe a gold headband. The pixels don't make it easy to make out. When the camera has then fully shifted to the enemies, we see what is probably confirmation of those sparkly spots returning, you know, the ones that give you items or EXP. At least, I assume that's what this golden sparkling spot is. And that has been all for this week. Who do you prefer, Bonaparte or Vakania? And do you have any theories concerning them? Share it in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please consider giving it a like, subscribing, and if you're also interested in either the Pokemon or Mario series, you may want to check out my other channels, Pichupedia and Piantapedia. Links are in the description. For now, thanks for watching and enjoy the rest of your day.